Hello, dear friends. I am tired of hearing misunderstandings about the concept of the term New Age, which are generally used as a weapon to disqualify freedom of thought, without knowing how to explain exactly the meaning of that word, because it is difficult to define it even for experts. I will try to clarify it as best as I can. Opinion piece. Misunderstandings of the New Age. It's a collection of very different beliefs. There is no central authority that defines it. Virtues and defects of the new spirituality. It is not a sect because there are many schools. These groups are not sectarian for the most part. There is no New Age, but many philosophies. It tries to reconcile philosophies of different systems. Not all of them can be put in the same bag. It is called new because it comes from the 70s. It means very different things to different people. The label is used as an insult without knowing its meaning. It is intended to regenerate the spiritual degradation of humankind. It is used as a weapon to suppress freedom of belief. The magnetic field of the Earth can affect our evolution. A fireball detected flying over central Spain last night. Soho space probe captures large UFO coming out of the interior of the sun. Mummies of kings and queens walk throughout Cairo in a great pharaonic parade. Uri Geller claims to have unblocked ever given with the power of the mind. Scientists connect human brain to computer wirelessly. Let's start. I do not know a single spiritual doctrine that is not a mixture of truths and half-truths. So I do not marry any of them, but I try to learn from all and select the best of each. The New Age trend is no exception, even though it contains many innovative and positive views, preferable to those of the old age. The Christian religious apologist defines the New Age as a sect, which is a nonsense, because there is not one, but many schools of thought very different among them and even contradictory, so you cannot put them all in the same bag, nor qualify all groups as sectarian, because most of them are not. The new era is not a single doctrine, but a set of beliefs very different from each other, and sometimes even incompatible. It's not a unitary and structured dogma like Catholicism, but a hodgepodge of philosophies that have been labeled New Age, although each school doesn't accept the label, nor is it considered to be part of any movement. It is a hodgepodge of a very diverse things, like a catch-all. Some people see the New Age as a revolutionary period of history dictated by the stars. The historians of ideas understand it as a manifestation of the perennial tradition, and the philosopher sees the New Age as a monistic or holistic worldview. Eclecticism is a philosophical school that seeks to reconcile doctrines that seem better or more plausible, even if they come from different systems, and I consider myself an eclectic. Therefore, the so-called New Age doesn't exist in itself as something concrete or defined, but it is used rather as a weapon to try to disqualify everything that comes out of the official and orthodox single thought. It is a label that means very different things to different people. Therefore, it cannot be said that this label is bad or good, since it defines almost nothing by itself. Definition. The New Age is a range of spiritual or religious beliefs and practices that grew rapidly in the Western world during the 70s. Precise academic definitions of the New Age differ in their emphasis, largely as a result of its highly eclectic structure. Although analytically it is often regarded as religious, those who participated in it typically prefer the designation spiritual or mind, body, spirit, and rarely uses the term New Age. Many scholars of the subject refer to it as the New Age movement, although others question this term. As from Western esotericism, the New Age drew heavily on a number of older exoteric traditions, particularly those arising from the occult current that developed in the 18th and 19th centuries. Such prominent occult influences include the work of Emanuel Swedenborg and Frank Mesmer, as well as the ideas of spiritualism, New Thought, and Theosophy. Various mid-20th century influences, such as the UFO religions on the 50s, the counterculture of the 60s, and the human potential movement, also exerted a strong influence on the early development of the New Age. The exact origins of the phenomenon remain controversial, but there is a general agreement that it became a major movement in the 70s, at which time it was centered primarily in the United Kingdom. It expanded and grew greatly in the 80s and 90s, particularly within the US. Beliefs. The New Age generally adopts a belief in a holistic form of divinity that permeates the entire universe, including human beings themselves. Thus, there is a strong emphasis on the spiritual authority of the self. This is accompanied by a common belief in a wide variety of non-human, semi-divine entities, such as angels and masters, with whom humans can communicate, particularly throughout the form of telepathic channeling. Generally, when considering human history divided into a series of distinct ages, a common New Age belief is that while humanity once lived in an age of great technological advancement and spiritual wisdom, it has entered now in a period of spiritual degeneration, which will be remedied by the establishment of Aquarian Age, from which the medium takes its name. There is also a strong focus on healing, particularly using alternative forms of medicine, and an emphasis on the notion that spirituality and science can be unified. I think in this. Centered primarily in Western countries, those involved in the New Age have been largely from middle and upper middle class backgrounds. The degree to which New Agers are involved in the medium varied considerably from those who adopted a range of New Age ideas and practices to those who embraced it and fully dedicated their lives to it. There is no central authority within the New Age movement that can determine what counts as New Age and what does not. Many of those groups and individuals who might qualify as part of the New Age reject the term New Age in reference to themselves. Some even express hostility to the term. Rather than calling themselves New Age, those involved in this milieu commonly describe themselves as spiritual seekers. I defined myself in the same way. Origin. As a form of Western spirituality, New Age has antecedents dating back to Southern Europe in late antiquity. Following the Age of Enlightenment in 18th century Europe, new esoteric ideas developed in response to the development of scientific rationality. Scholars call this new esoteric trend occultism, and this occultism was a key factor in the development of the worldwide from which the New Age emerged. From a historical perspective, the New Age phenomenon is more associated with the counterculture of the 60s. George Harrison's adoption of Hindu philosophy and Indian instrumentation in his songs with the Beatles in the mid of the 60s, along with the band's highly publicized study of transcendental meditation, really set in motion the human potential movement that later became New Age. The counterculture of the 60s had declined rapidly by the early 70s, largely due to the collapse of the Commune movement, but it would be many former members of the counterculture and hippie subculture who subsequently became early adherents of the New Age movement. Way of life. Some New Agers advocate living simply and sustainably to reduce humanity's impact on the Earth's natural resources, and they eschew consumerism. The New Age movement has focused on rebuilding a sense of community to counteract social disintegration. This has been attempted throughout the formation of intentional communities, where individuals come together to live and work in a communal lifestyle. New Age centers have been established in various parts of the world, representing an institutionalized form of the movement. Several New Age advocates have emphasized the use of spiritual techniques as a tool for achieving financial prosperity. This New Age capitalism is primarily small-scale and entrepreneurial, centered on small businesses run by members of the petty bourgeoisie, rather than being dominated by large-scale multinational corporations. 10 debatable beliefs. 10 New Age beliefs that must unravel according to Dr. Lisa Rankin. First, be here and now. It's not that easy, and it doesn't always work. Second, negative thoughts are not real and need to be fixed. They are not real, but they cost a lot of suffering. Third, reality is an illusion. Only love is real. An illusion that devours you, as long as you don't defend yourself, because the big fish eats the little fish. Fourth, fear is the opposite of love. The only virus is fear. A miracle is when we choose love over fear. That's great, but it is not so easy to do. Fifth, get out of your victim story. As long as you don't have the boot on your neck. Sixth, your ego is a pig. You need to kill it. That is a fallacy, because the ego helps to survive. You don't need to kill it, but to control it and put it at the service of the soul. The opposite would be egoism. Seventh, the law of the teachings of attractions and manifestation. It's not enough to imagine it. It is necessary to work hard to get it. Eighth, all mental and physical illnesses would disappear with a healthy diet. Another fallacy, because it depends on what illness. If you break a bone, you are not going to take chamomile, an infusion of an herb, for example. Ninth, all disease would be the result of a weak immune system and could be reversed with diet, supplements, and integrative and functional medicine. That helps prevent problems, but you have to go to the doctor if the disease is severe or advanced. 10th, we are in the midst of a great awakening, shift to fifth density, and transition to a new utopia. That is true, but you have to work hard to end it and to move up in frequency. End of this subject. Spain. Families without resources in Spain find a future in the countryside. Fundación Madrina in Madrid is rehousing vulnerable people in nearby rural towns where they have greater access to housing and boost their activity. I think this is a magnificent initiative. Mask in the open air. I just found out that 3 box senators were the ones who proposed the obligation to wear masks in the open air, even if the safety distance is kept. However, they forgot to include a derogatory provision of the previous rule that allowed to go without a mask outdoors, keeping a minimum of 1.5 meters of safe distance, so that the previous rule would remain in force in case of appealing a fine, according to the lawyer José Ortega. Beach crowds defy restrictions in Catalonia. Catalonia's beaches were packed on Saturday as fine spring weather attracted sun worshippers, despite government warnings to avoid breaching restrictions. You can't put gates on the countryside. Tourism in the doldrums. Package tour sales for the current summer season are down 76% compared to last year, which was already weak. January and February, which are traditionally months of many reservations for the summer, have left red numbers. The winter season up to March fell 92%. Spain debt soars to 120% of GDP in 2020 due to the health crisis, as its activity was greatly reduced in key tourism and leisure sectors. On the other hand, the social security debt grew by 55% to over 85 billion euros, 7.6% of GDP. A fireball is detected flying over the center of Spain. The detectors of the SMART project of the Institute of Astrophysics of Andalusia, from the astronomic observatories of Seville, La Ita, Toledo, Calar Alto, Almería, La Sagra, Granada, and Madrid, have recorded the passage of a fireball over the center of Spain at 72,000 kilometers per hour on April 1st at 23:05 hours. Spain develops an advanced system for early detection of underwater threats. A collaboration between universities and SMEs financed by the Ministry of Defense has developed a national system for early detection of underwater threats, such as enemy submarines or mines, using unnamed vehicles and sensor networks, which may also have civilian applications. Mexico. An elderly woman was reportedly injected with air in Mexico. This is the second case of this type reported in the country, after the same thing happened to a new 95-year-old woman in Sonora. The relatives of Francisca Robles, 84 years old, denounced that last Wednesday she was taken to an inoculation center in Tlalnepantla, Mexico, and there she was injected with air instead of the corresponding dose. Extrajudicial execution of a teenager in Mexico. 2 months after the murder of a teenage soccer player of the Mexican Soccer League in Oaxaca by police officers, the Ombudsman's office of that Mexican state demonstrated the commission of serious human rights violations committed by the municipal police of Acatlán de Pérez Figueroa. The classified documents repeat that Brazil was complicit in the fall of Allende. Confidential documents from the U.S. intelligence agency, now declassified, show that the Brazilian military regime jointly planned with President Richard Nixon the coup d'état against Salvador Allende in Chile. Great powers. U.S. develops interceptor that will shoot down hypersonic missiles from Russia and China. The U.S. has just begun the next stage of modernizing the missile defense system that protects its mainland. In late March, the Pentagon selected 2 companies to develop the next generation interceptor. It will be capable of shooting down hypersonic missiles. Russia could have the first prototype of the digital rubble ready by this year. A representative of the Financial Market Committee of the State Duma said that testing of the currency could begin by the end of 2021. The launch of the first prototype of Russia's new form of national currency, the digital ruble, could be ready by this year. Anatoly Aksakov, head of the Financial Market Committee of the State Duma, revealed on Saturday. China manufactures artificial sand and gravel in the face of impending global shortages of these natural resources. Such raw materials collected from riverbeds are essential for the construction industry as an additive for making cement and concrete. Egypt. Mummies of kings and queens tour Cairo in a great pharaonic parade. In a spectacular parade, 22 mummies of kings and queens of the new empire left the Egyptian Museum on Saturday, toured Cairo aboard armored vehicles with pharaonic decoration, accompanied by guards or on horseback, and priests as in ancient times. Old Egyptian priests, The mummies pass through the renowned Tahrir Square, decorated with banners and illuminated with torches and colored lights, as well as the music of a live drum group and the Cairo Opera Symphony Orchestra, which provided the soundtrack to the so-called Golden Parade. Several horse-drawn chariots and chairs singing in ancient languages accompanied Ramses the Great and 21 of his fellow pharaohs to their final resting place. During the procession, called the Golden Parade of the Pharaohs, the mummies of 18 kings and 4 queens of ancient Egypt were moved from their temporary home at the Egyptian Museum, where they had been resting for a century, to the new National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, the final resting place. The ceremony kicked off with a 21-gun salute and a light and music show. Amazing. Uri Geller claims to have disentangled the Ever Given in the Suez Canal with the power of the mind. Renowned Israeli mentalist Uri Geller claims to have disentangled the Ever Given cargo ship on March 29th after the vessel was trapped in the Suez Canal for nearly a week, the Esoteric Paranormal World website reports. To that end, Uri Geller suggested the world work together to free the ship with their mind. The mentalist was instructing his followers to concentrate on moving the Ever Given at the same time every day, 11:11. In numerology time, the time 11:11 has spiritual significance. Many make wishes of prayer at that time, as it is considered an energetically auspicious time. Geller explained that the collective brain power of the world, not the 14 tugboats trying to uncouple the ship, already moved it a little bit. Keep up the good work, Geller wrote on Twitter. Focus every day at 11:11 a.m. and 11:11 p.m. and send your energy to free the ship. Help the tugboats too. And after the ship was freed on March 29th, Geller congratulated his followers on Twitter, assuring them that the collective brain power had worked. We did it. We launched the ship. Well done. This was a mammoth task, but with your mental power and self-confidence, we all together released the ship. The mentalist told Israeli newspaper Arut Sheva, in quotes, I believe that with my powers and with the powers of those who concentrated with me, we did it. I even have emails from the source back in Suez, who were surprised to see the ship move at 11:04. Pharaonic traffic jam caused by Ever Given in the Suez Canal ends. The pharaonic traffic jam in the Suez Canal is over. According to the Egyptian authorities, traffic is flowing normally again throughout one of the busiest trade routes on the planet. More than 400 large ships, including a US aircraft carrier, has been waiting for days to cross in one direction or the other. Ever Given sets alarm bells ringing about new and bigger megaships. The Japanese cargo ships that block the Suez Canal is dwarfed by the new megaships coming out to Asian shipyards, which experts say pose increasing risks to the shipping industry. With a length of 400 meters and a capacity of around 220,000 tons, the ship involved in the incident is just the tip of the iceberg in a sector led by Korean and Chinese companies, and whose trend points to ever larger sizes in line with the boom in international trade. Science. A space probe captures a UFO coming out of the interior of the Sun. On March 27, 2021, the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory Soho, a space probe of the ESA and NASA space agencies, recorded an apparently common and small flare compared to the Sun. It wasn't even considered a flare, but a small explosion in solar matter near the active zone. But just at that moment, a UFO emerged from the interior at high speed, reports the Esoteric Paranormal World website. Did the Earth's magnetic field affect our evolution? Faunal extinctions and evolutionary changes in the fossil fossil record have captured great attention since the dawn of the earth science. The origin of such extinctions is varied: global climate changes, tectonic activity, and asteroid and comet impacts are some of the best known. However, in 1963, Robert James Uffen pointed out in the journal Nature the possible influence of the Earth's core on the evolution of life. Scientists connect a human brain to a computer wirelessly for the first time. The neuroscientists who developed the new technology stress the importance of breakthrough for recovery processes in people with paralysis or robotic prostheses. The US team of scientists BrainGate, which specializes in the development of technologies for people with cerebral paralysis, has conducted the first human test of a wireless brain-computer interface, which is capable of capturing and decoding signals in the human brain and transmitting them to external devices without a wired connection. These interfaces allow people with disabilities to write on computer screens or manipulate robotic prostheses. They work thanks to a chip implanted in the patient's motor cortex that records the signals emitted by neurons. The chip then sends this data to a computer that translates them into instructions that it sends, for example, to a robotic arm so that it moves in obedience to the subject's thoughts. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.